ready to get started here. So welcome to this week's CybHER conversation brought to you by Peraton. My name is Janessa Palmieri. On behalf of Peraton, we are proud to partner with CybHER to bring you these weekly conversations. For those of you who are joining us for the first time today, CybHER is a program out of Dakota State University in Madison, South Dakota that works to motivate, empower, and educate young women in cybersecurity. Just a reminder, at any point during the program, you can ask a question via the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. I am very honored to introduce today's speaker, Heather Chandler. Heather is a game development consultant and has 23 years of career experience in video game development, including 3 years as a senior producer on Fortnite. Heather, thank you for being here today.
My pleasure. It's great to be here with you guys today. All right, I need to pull up my notes real quick. I spent so much time with the Zoom stuff, I have to pull it up. All right. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I wanted to just start talk a little bit about myself and how I got to my career in the game industry, and then just talk about the careers in the game industry as a whole, because I think one of the things that I want people to know and understand about the industry is that there is lots of different roles that you can do there, and you don't necessarily have to do only programming or only art or only one thing or the other. Because it's got a combination of creative stuff and STEM stuff, there's lots of different ways you can go in there and find something that you might enjoy doing as part of the game industry. I am a producer, and I really sit in the middle of the team, and I help pull all the pieces together when you're making a game. Because a lot of people are like, what does a producer do? Well, I think the producer is the heart of the team. You have all of these different things going on. You have engineers doing code. You have artists creating concept art and models. You have designers taking the building blocks that are provided to them by the art departments and the engineering departments, and they're putting this together in a game. So that's the development side of it. And then you have the QA testers testing while they're making the game to catch up all the bugs. And then on the other side, you have marketing and corporate and publishing and community management. So like any other business, they need to have somebody who sits in between sort of the game development team and all the other things that need to happen to get the game launched, to pull all the pieces together, track down all the things that need to get done, make sure that everybody has what they need. So on any given day as a producer, my job will tackle lots of different problems. So it's all about solving problems and unblocking people, making sure that the team is creating a game that is fun and that you're getting good feedback on it and you're doing play testing on it. And so I might one day have to talk with the legal department about a contract regarding outsourcing. Another day I might be working with the UX lab to user experience lab to set up a play test. Another time I might be sitting in a meeting with art and design discussing character concepts and sort of what do we want to do in the game. Another time might be in a meeting with engineering and design about the game features and what's possible within the engineering capability that we have. So that's kind of what a producer does. They keep the team moving forward. There are different types of producers. So you can have producers that focus mostly on project management. So that's sort of budgets and schedules, and they work with the team and the leads. You might have a technical producer who could be an engineer as well, and who understands how to talk with engineers and artists and designers. And they really focus on making sure that the technical parts of the game are moving forward and that everything is getting solved and that things are happening. The other thing is that a producer does often have to make lots of decisions, and they may be making decisions on things where they are not necessarily an expert. So they have to rely on the folks that are on the team that are the experts. So I work with maybe an art director or a creative director or a technical director or a lead engineer, And I rely on those folks to talk through the problems or the things that we're trying to solve, and then take all that information and then make a decision from it. Sometimes my decisions aren't turn out, maybe that wasn't the right decision to make, but most of the time, if it, either you make the decision and it was the right one, or something happened and then you have to make another decision. So it's all about, iterating and working together, and it's a very collaborative sort of experience. Let's see. I got started, game development was that I had considered as a career when I first started out. I went to school and studied art history, but I also was really interested in physics and chemistry and biology. But I got my degree in art history, and I went on and I got a master's degree in film studies at the University of Southern California, because I was really interested in entertainment and creating things that people could enjoy and be entertained by. And while I was living in Los Angeles, I ended up getting an entry-level position at Activision. And this was many years ago, before Activision was the Activision that's, the big behemoth that it is today. And they were looking for people that had a film background, because they were interested in trying to figure out, what's the process of making a game? Could you create a process similar to how they have the movie process that helps, with the game development process, so that you can pull all these pieces together? And once I got there and I started working with all these different people, artists, designers, engineers, marketing people, I realized that it was a very good fit for kind of what I wanted to do. And so I had a huge opportunity to learn from the ground up, where I was able to talk directly with all the people that are responsible for making the game, and really learn and understand the nuts and bolts of what it takes to create a game, to iterate on it, to test it, to get it out to the players, and then to take that player feedback and then improve sort of either the sequel or the next update of the game. And while I was at Activision, I had some mentors that helped me as well, kind of figure out what I needed to do and learn. So I studied project management, I studied business and marketing, and I studied how to make games. I was able to talk a programmer into teaching me how to do some basic programming so that I could understand how that all works. And I was able, with each job I took after that, to make a move up the ladder, so to speak, and really sort of worked my way up through all the various production roles that you can have. And in doing that, I wrote a book called The Game Production Handbook, which was the first book that I know of that when it came out, because I wanted to write the book that I wished I'd had when I first started making games. And so I wrote this game production handbook, and then it's gone on to have multiple editions, and I update it every couple of years. The latest version is called actually the Game Production Toolbox, and it just takes you through the whole process, start to finish, of what the production of a game looks like. There's lots of great books out there about game design and engineering. This book focuses on the nuts and bolts of, you have an idea, how do you actually turn this idea into something and get it launched out into the real world? And I was, worked on many different titles. I worked on Tom Clancy titles. I've worked on independent mobile games. And then I was able to parlay all of this experience into a position at Epic Games, where I worked on Fortnite for 3.5 years as the senior producer. That experience was really exciting. And I was working on Fortnite before they launched it. So I got to see, sort of work closely with the team on Fortnite before it was a thing. And then Fortnite was launched. And then I worked on the game for about a year or so after it was launched. And I got to see, how popular it became. And the team was super excited by it. And, working on a game like that is a huge learning experience. There's so many things that you learn. And for a game that's popular like that, and everybody has an opinion, there's lots of things that internally we have to take into account when we make changes and updates to the game. So I learned a lot about how to manage kind of a live game, which is very different than just purchasing like a game off the shelf and playing it sort of one time through. So lots of great things that I learned there. And then after that, I wanted to take all the stuff that I had learned just for making games for my career. And then I became a consultant. And so now I work with lots of different teams, mostly independent developers that are looking for somebody to come help them, make their idea a reality. So there you have it.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. We are so excited. I don't think we've had a game developing consultant on conversations before. It sounds exciting. I'm not a big gamer. I don't even have an idea of what kind of things go on behind it, but just watching you speak about it, about your experience and how bringing together like so many different teams, not just developers, but legal and other departments, they're all coming together to create a game. It's one huge project and it just sounds so exciting.
Yeah.
So again, audience, if you have any questions, please put your question in the Q&A box in the Zoom control panel and we will get to all the questions. So you said you had a degree in art history. So does that ever come into play or help you when you're doing game consulting?
I would say the short answer is not really. I guess it really depends on sort of what you take away from it. I think the thing that having a degree in anything is useful for is that you've learned how to research, analyze, put things together, look at things from different perspectives. And all of those skills are really important when you do anything, but especially in game development, because you have so many different people that you're working with. So I think that the art history degree in and of itself was great, but because I studied lots of different science and had that creative piece, I really understood the fusion of how technology and creativity could come together in an entertainment product and find a position where both of those parts of my mind were engaged and excited about it. Because I think most folks have both parts. Nobody is just all one thing or the other.
Like that. I think at one point, I don't think it has anything related to this, but when you just said art history and gaming, it made me think of this an article I read somewhere. So there was this high school group touring somewhere in Italy, and they'd gotten lost. They were with their teacher, a bunch of students with their teacher, and they'd gotten lost. And this one student he was like, oh, you know what? You follow me, I'll take you out. And he just leads them all out. And then they ask him, how do you know this? Because he plays Assassin's Creed. And it was the exact same location. So he was able to retrace his steps back and get them out of there. And I'm like, the level of detail that must have gone into developing the game that helped this one student bring his entire group outside of their lost zone. It was kind of amazing.
It really is. And when you think about it in that respect, there was a game I worked on, I don't remember the title of it, but they recreated the city of Los Angeles in it by street. And it was a really interesting experiment, because this was before stuff like Pokemon Go, where they had sort of that AR mapping. But what they had done is they had scanned map data and basically had all the streets in there, and you could drive around in your car and go up and down all the various streets. Like I was like, oh, I want to go see what my house is. Now, of course, you didn't have every single detail of it, so you had like a block of apartments, but what they did do well was the street locations. And then for some of the iconic things like the Grauman's Chinese Theater or the Capitol Records building, they had built approximations of those types of landmarks and things in the building. And so that was truly, it was an engineering feat, to take all that data and figure out can we scan this data and utilize this information to create this layout, and then art to figure out what's the optimal way we can create a solution that still gives you the feeling of being in the city without recreating every individual thing. And then of course design, when you have a map that's basically a city, you have to figure out how can you set waypoints and create experiences for the players so they feel like they're doing something and they're not just wandering around. And of course, Assassin's Creed, which came out many years later, really has done that very well with, I mean, Italy is a great example because they do base a lot of their stuff on real world locations.
Yeah, I just thought it was so fantastic. Like, again, I can't stress it enough. The level of detail that goes into something that helps a group of lost people find their way back out is just amazing. I'm amazed. And
Absolutely.
um, so one question that we have is, does the popularity of the game impact production?
Yeah, so I have worked on, of course, Fortnite, which is the most popular game. And to kind of give a little bit of sort of insider knowledge about how all the stuff works, when you make a game, you'll have teams. I've worked with teams as small as 3, and I've worked with teams as large as 300. So when you have a game like Fortnite, where it's a live game and you're doing constant updates and changes for it, that does have a huge impact on sort of how you might produce the game. Before we launched the game, we were really focused on what's the core game loop, what's the thing the player is going to be doing all the time in the game. So if you've played Fortnite, you know that building is a huge part of it. And so they spent a long time just figuring out what's the best way for the player to gather their materials and then turn them into things that they could use to build. And so they created this really neat system of, that they have to map to the controller, right, to make it easy for the players to use, where you can quickly build things, all kinds of different things with different shapes and different materials. And they really focused on polishing that. And so when the game came out and everyone got excited about Battle Royale, it had a very polished feel to it because they'd spent so much time on sort of the mechanics and the things that the players are going to do. Once the game was released, we're having a thunderstorm, by the way, so if you hear rumbling, that's what that is. Once the game was released and the players responded to it, it in one way it becomes easier because now you have real world player information, so you can see what players actually like or what they want more of, because before you launch a game, you don't really know, so you're kind of guessing. Will players think building is fun? Will they think that is fun? Hey, we think this sounds like a really neat idea. And sometimes you put those things in the game and nobody even pays attention to it. So when you don't have the player feedback, you're really kind of left as a team really focusing on iterating and play testing, internally, and figuring out what makes sense. And sometimes you have a bit more breathing room depending on what your schedules are. Once the game is live and then the players respond to it and they want that content, then you have to be very selective about prioritizing what things you're going to make next. And so then the production schedule might have shifting priorities on a weekly or monthly basis, depending on what type of things you're trying to get ready for the player. So it can become a little more stressful in one ways, because now you're like, wow, the players really want this. Well, how quickly can we get this out to them?
Wow. So what was it like being a part of a huge, like, this most popular game, Fortnite? What was it like being a part of the team that developed and launched that game?
I can definitely say that game developers are very, very passionate about whatever they do. And this is for any team that I've worked on. And so you are working with the most dedicated and passionate people who put everything they can into their craft. And so when you work on a team like Fortnite, you're working with several hundred people that all have that same attitude that you do, which is, I want to make the best thing for the players. And so there is this strong sense of camaraderie, because it's hard to kind of figure out fun. You don't know if something's going to be fun until you spend some effort against it and get some prototypes working and then get feedback from people. And as you go through and kind of see what works or what doesn't work, the team develops this camaraderie, because we're all really hoping to get that X factor, I suppose, for what's gonna make a good game. And so Fortnite, you know, especially because it was a project where we thought that people would like the game. And we were very convinced that we were doing something awesome. But, you know, it's not until you launch the game that you know for sure. So there's sometimes you're doubting, like, is this game going to be as awesome as I think it's going to be? And so after the game was launched, I mean, I think everybody was just so ecstatic and just so pleased that it really was the awesome game that we all thought it was. And you just feel this great sense of pride because you're like, yeah, we did it, you know, because it really is, it's like a sports team. You get a bunch of people together and they're a team and they accomplish this great thing and you just feel really great.
So with younger audiences, you know, getting addicted to video games and just wanting to play all the time, how do game production companies deal with that kind of addiction? Like,
yeah, that's a, you know, that it's a complicated issue. There's not an easy answer for it. I would say that certainly with younger players, there's the piece of sort of who is managing their screen time and their gameplay time and helping to teach them good habits. I think most game developers want to create an experience that is very engaging, and they're not trying to make something addictive so that someone can't pull themselves away from it. But you know, if you were designing a game that's specifically geared towards kids, there are regulations and things like that that have to be followed when you make these games, because you're trying to create an optimal experience for kids, and we know that they don't need to be spending all that time in front of their screens. It's interesting because in China, they actually have many laws that regulate game time. And so if you release a game in China, you have to put a bunch of extra stuff in there that, number one, tracks how much time the player has spent on the game. And then based on the time they've spent in a play session, send messages saying, okay, you've been playing the game for 30 minutes, go outside, you know, don't forget to go eat and things like that. And then these sort of timed things that you put in the game, depending on the age of the player, because I'm assuming in order for this to work, that the kids have an account that their parents set up for them so they know how old they are. And so these regulations, you know, are a sliding scale based on age. And eventually, if you've reached sort of what they consider the maximum amount of time you should spend in a game per day, the game is cut off and you can't play it anymore until, you know, I guess like a new cycle starts up again. So I am curious to see, I mean, that's how they do it in China. You know, certainly I do wonder if people will start looking at sort of things like that, if they think it's necessary, you know, but it's a complex issue, you know, and there's many different sides to it.
yeah, it just, there's a lot of angles. Like you said, it depends on your demographic location or where you are right now, your living arrangement, all of that thing.
Yes.
So yeah, lots of factors go into playing
There's a
games.
lot of
Wow.
factors that go into it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what does your day-to-day look like?
So my day to day, you know, at the surface, it's very funny because now that everyone's been working from home on during the pandemic, you know, like my son sees me on Zoom calls all the time. So he thinks my day to day is basically I'm talking to people on Zoom. And so at the surface, that is somewhat what a producer's role looks like to somebody coming from the outside, like, oh, they're just in a bunch of meetings and they're talking to people. My day to day is really all about, you know, someone has created a prototype and now they need to get some feedback on it. So I have to play the prototype and give them feedback, and then I figure out who else we need to send that game to. Another person, their computer broke down, so they need a new computer, or they need this, or they need that. There are, you know, when you work on mobile games or console games, you have to talk with Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo. So it's talking with those folks about the requirements that they have, and then making sure that the development team has this information. When it's not a pandemic, it's very similar. It's like you're going around, you're talking to the team, you're seeing how things are going. Someone has a problem, and they come in all shapes and sizes. I've dealt with sort of HR type issues. I've dealt with hardware issues. I've dealt with, people who disagree with how to handle something. I've dealt with external contractors that are supposed to kind of do a thing and deliver it on time, but then they're late, or the thing that they've delivered is not good. So it's figuring all of that stuff out, communicating good and bad news, like, hey, we're over budget. Can we get more money? So it's all those sorts of things. I like to say that the producer does everything except design, program, and make art, because they are there to shield the team in a way from all these sort of other things that need to happen, so that the team can stay focused on implementing the work.
Awesome. So what's one risk that you've taken in your career that's like really paid off?
Oh gosh, I would definitely say most of the companies that I have moved on from, I had a clear idea on where I wanted to go. But after I wrote the book, I was really interested in becoming a freelancer. And so I had the book out and I said, okay, you know what? I think this is the time for me to go out on my own. And so I did. And I didn't necessarily have a clear idea of who I would be working with, but I knew enough people in the industry that eventually I found some really great clients and was able to work with them. And that really paid off because it allowed me to work on lots of different projects and meet lots of different people and get an understanding of all the different things that were out there. And then that eventually led to me getting my job at Epic.
Very cool. Also, what would you like your lasting impact to be?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I think for me, ironically, as someone who makes games, I'm really all about people and helping them figure out what they need to make things happen. And so of course, I'm super proud of the work that I did on Fortnite, but I think that I want my lasting impact to be somebody who advocated for, folks to come and work in the game industry, because there's lots of different things, and then helped teach people how to go do this.
I love that. Since we're out of time, my last question for you is, what advice would you give to all the young people that are watching this session right now?
Oh, I always love this question because number one, I say play games. Now, caveat, right? Of course, you want to play games and understand them, but it's important to play different types of games, and especially games that maybe you may not play normally as per choice. And also, it's really great to play games that people say are bad, because it really helps you understand all the different things that go into making a game. I would say then, depending on sort of what you think you might be interested in, there are, if you're interested in becoming a programmer or designer, I'd say go download one of the game engine tool sets. So there's the Unreal Engine and there's the Unity Engine, and they're both free to download. They both come with tons of tutorials, and you can start doing that. For younger folks in elementary and middle school, there's something called Scratch that's free. And so I would highly recommend that. That's a really fun way to learn about coding and making games. And then I would say find other people that are interested in making games. And even, this is for elementary up through college, make prototypes. And you don't even necessarily need to know how to code to make prototypes. You can repurpose board games, card games, dice games. There's lots of different ways you can express sort of what you think would be fun. And then if you've been learning one of these other tools, you can start trying to make that into an actual video game.
That is a unique answer. I really love that. And I like how you mentioned that, like, it really takes everybody to create a video game. Like, it's not like your own individual work. You work as a team. And I think there's kind of a stereotype in that video game production, programming, cybersecurity society, that we can just work on our own and be successful. But in reality, we have to work as a team. So I really liked that you mentioned that. And so we're running out of time here. So Kanti is going to go ahead and open up a quick poll that we really appreciate that you fill out. And it actually popped out on my screen too. And so if you could follow us on social media, we have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out cyber.org for more information on our programs and upcoming conversations. Thank you for joining us tonight, Heather, and have a good night.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.